Donald Trump is back, and whether you love him or hate him, one thing is clear. His return is shaking the foundations of global politics. But is this a victory for nationalism and sovereignty, or just another step in a much bigger game, the so-called New World Order? For decades, people have talked about an elite group of globalists, powerful figures in politics, business, and finance, working behind the scenes to reshape the world. Some call it conspiracy. Others say it's just how the system works. But what's undeniable is that Trump has been one of the biggest disruptors to this global structure in modern history. The battle that started in 2016. When Trump first took office in 2016, he wasn't just another U.S. president. He was an outsider, a billionaire businessman who promised to fight the political establishment. He called out the deep state, withdrew from globalist agreements, and put America first. And because of that, he made enemies, not just in the U.S., but around the world. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, rejecting environmental policies pushed by global institutions. He went after China with a trade war that sent shockwaves through the global economy. He pushed back against NATO, questioning why America was funding European defense while others paid little. He publicly attacked the United Nations and the World Health Organization, calling them corrupt and ineffective. His presidency wasn't just about policies, it was about challenging a system that had been in place for decades. And that's why the backlash against him was unlike anything we had ever seen. Trump versus the establishment. Mainstream media waged a relentless campaign against him, calling him a threat to democracy. Intelligence agencies, the so-called deep state, accused him of colluding with Russia, claims that later fell apart but damaged his presidency. Big tech companies censored his supporters and eventually banned him from social media entirely. Even within his own party, establishment Republicans fought against him at every turn. But despite all of this, Trump remained a dominant political force. And after 4 years of Joe Biden, the American people and the world have brought him back for a second round. What's at stake now? Will Trump's return dismantle the influence of globalist organizations like the World Economic Forum, WEF, the United Nations, UN, and the World Health Organization, the WHO? Will he reignite economic wars with China and shake up alliances with NATO and the Middle East? And how will AI, censorship, and digital warfare shape his battle against the establishment? In this video, we'll break down Trump's first term, what he accomplished, the battles he fought, and the enemies he made, the impact of his return, how it could reshape global power, challenge the deep state, and change the world economy, the future, how AI, free speech, and the digital battleground could determine the outcome of this high-stakes war. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll have a clearer picture of whether Trump's return marks the end of the globalist agenda, or just the beginning of a new chapter in the fight for world control. For years, the world has been shaped by powerful global institutions. Organizations like the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and the International Monetary Fund. These groups claim to promote stability, cooperation, and economic progress. But Donald Trump has always seen them differently, not as protectors of democracy, but as unelected elites who want to control nations, economies, and even people's freedoms. From the moment Trump stepped onto the political stage, he made it clear he was not here to play by their rules. His entire presidency became a battle between two forces, nationalism versus globalism. How Trump fought the globalist agenda. 1. The Paris Climate Agreement, a globalist policy Trump rejected. In 2017, Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He argued it was a deal that punished the American economy while allowing countries like China to continue polluting. The globalist elites called him reckless, but Trump saw it differently. He believed in putting American jobs and industries first, rather than sacrificing them for an international agenda controlled by the United Nations. 2. NATO and foreign military commitments. Trump questioned why the U.S. was paying billions to protect Europe, while NATO allies were contributing far less. He forced countries like Germany to increase their military spending instead of relying on American defense. The globalist media called him a threat to Western unity, but in reality, he was challenging an outdated system that put American American taxpayers last. 3. The trade war with China, challenging the globalist economy. For years, globalist policies promoted free trade at America's expense. Companies moved factories overseas, jobs disappeared, and China became the world's manufacturing powerhouse. Trump changed that. He imposed massive tariffs on Chinese goods and renegotiated trade deals like NAFTA, replacing it with the USMCA, which protected American workers. Globalists warned that this would hurt the economy, but instead, the U.S. saw job growth and a stronger manufacturing sector. The World Health Organization and COVID-19. When COVID-19 hit, Trump accused the WHO of covering up for China and failing to prevent the pandemic. In response, he cut U.S. funding to the WHO, saying America wouldn't pay for an organization that worked against its interests. Globalists called this irresponsible, but Trump saw the WHO as just another tool of international control. Why globalists feared Trump? It wasn't just Trump's policies that scared them. It was his ideology. He proved that a single leader could stand up to global institutions and still win. He exposed how unelected bureaucrats in places like Brussels, Geneva, and Davos were making decisions that affected millions of people without their consent. He showed that nationalism, putting your own country first, was not a dangerous idea, but a powerful alternative to globalism. And most of all, he proved that the people, not the elites, should be the ones in control. But globalists didn't just sit back and watch. They fought back harder than ever, through the media, through political opposition, and through big tech censorship. And now, with Trump returning to power, the battle is about to begin again. Trump's battle against globalism wasn't just about institutions like the UN, NATO, or the World Economic Forum. It was also about taking on the biggest players in the global order, China and Russia. And while the media often painted Trump as being soft on Russia and reckless with China, the reality was far more complex. His policies upended decades of diplomatic strategy, shaking the foundations of global power. So, how did Trump handle these two superpowers? And what does his return mean for the future of U.S.-China and U.S.-Russia relation? Let's break it down. Trump's return isn't just a challenge to the globalist elite, it's a direct threat to the world's biggest superpowers, China and Russia. For years, the media painted Trump as reckless with China and too friendly with Russia. But was that really the truth? Or was he playing a completely different game? One where he redefined America's role on the global stage. In reality, Trump was the first president in decades to take real action against China's economic dominance while keeping Russia in check without dragging the U.S. into another endless war. So, what was Trump's strategy? And now that he's back, what comes next? For decades, American leaders followed a strategy of engagement with China. The idea was simple. If the U.S. did business with China, the country would modernize, become more democratic, and integrate into the global economy peacefully. Instead, the opposite happened. China became the world's largest manufacturing hub, stealing American jobs. It manipulated its currency, giving itself an unfair trade advantage. It stole U.S. technology through cyber espionage and forced partnerships with American companies. And it expanded its global influence through the Belt and Road Initiative, locking developing countries into debt traps. Trump didn't accept this. Unlike previous presidents who let China walk all over American interests, he fought back. Trump imposed tariffs on over $500 billion worth of Chinese goods, making it more expensive for China to do business in America. He renegotiated trade deals, ensuring better protections for American manufacturers. He banned Chinese tech companies like Huawei from accessing U.S. networks, warning that they were tools for Chinese espionage. And he cut U.S. reliance on Chinese supply chains, bringing factories back to America. Globalists warned that this would hurt the economy, but instead, U.S. manufacturing jobs grew, and China struggled with economic slowdowns. When COVID-19 hit, Trump openly blamed China, calling it the China virus. He cut U.S. funding to the World Health Organization, accusing it of covering for Beijing's failures. He pushed for an investigation into the Wuhan lab, a theory that was once dismissed but later gained credibility. And he stopped travel from China early, a move that his opponents first criticized but later admitted was necessary. Trump's stance on China wasn't just about trade. It was about stopping a rising global power that had been exploiting the U.S. for decades. Now, let's talk about Russia. The mainstream media media constantly pushed the narrative that Trump was a puppet of Vladimir Putin. They spent years investigating him for so-called Russian collusion, but after a multi-million-dollar investigation, no evidence was found. In reality, Trump was tougher on Russia than any modern president. He approved the largest military budget increase in U.S. history, strengthening the military to counter threats like Russia. He imposed some of the harshest sanctions on Russia, targeting its energy sector and top oligarchs. He armed Ukraine with lethal weapons, something Obama refused to do, making it harder for Russia to expand its influence. Under Trump, the U.S. became the world's top energy producer, exporting oil and gas to Europe. This weakened Russia's control over European energy markets, reducing its leverage over NATO countries. Trump opposed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, warning that it would make Europe dependent on Russian energy, a warning that proved correct after Biden let the pipeline go forward. So why did the media and globalists push the Trump loves Russia narrative? Because Trump wasn't following their script. He didn't start new wars like previous presidents. He pushed for peace talks with Russia instead of escalating tensions. And most of all, he didn't let the deep state control his foreign policy. Unlike Biden, who reignited tensions with Russia the moment he took office, Trump's approach was different. Strong on policy, but open to diplomacy. With Trump returning to power, the world is watching. Will he restart the trade war with China? Will he strengthen U.S.-Russia ties to avoid another global conflict? Or will the deep state and media try to sabotage him again? One thing is certain, Trump isn't backing down. Trump's battles with China and Russia shaped global power, but his policies in the Middle East may have had the most lasting impact. He was the first U.S. president in decades to broker peace deals between Israel and its Arab neighbors. He took a hard stance against Iran, cut back on military interventions, and reshaped America's relationships in the region. But were these moves a step toward lasting peace, or just temporary victories? And with Trump's return, what shifts can we expect in the Middle East? The answers may redefine the future of the region. Trump's first term reshaped the Middle East in ways no one expected. Historic peace deals, a tough stance on Iran, and a shift away from endless wars. But now, with his return, the real question is, what happens next? Will Trump expand his strategy, pushing for deeper alliances and stronger military dominance? Or will he face new challenges that could undo his past successes? Let's look ahead at what a second Trump presidency means for the region. Expanding the Abraham Accords, a Saudi-Israel peace deal. One of the biggest foreign policy moves Trump could make is securing a peace deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has been warming up to Israel, but Biden's weak diplomacy has slowed progress. With Trump back, the Saudis may be more willing to negotiate, especially if the U.S. offers stronger military support against Iran. If successful, this could fully isolate Iran and reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. Cracking down on Iran, will there be military action? Trump already crippled Iran's economy with sanctions in his first term. But will he go further this time? If Iran continues pursuing nuclear weapons, Trump might face pressure to launch targeted military strikes on nuclear facilities. Another option? More covert operations, similar to the assassination of Iran's top general in 2020. A Trump-led America could also push Israel into direct action against Iran, increasing the risk of regional conflict. U.S. military presence. More withdrawals or a return to strength? In his first term, Trump pulled troops out of Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. But after Biden's failed withdrawal from Afghanistan, some allies fear the U.S. is losing influence. Trump might send troops back to key strategic areas, ensuring America keeps control over oil-rich regions and counterterrorism operations. However, he could also double down on reducing U.S. involvement, forcing allies like Saudi Arabia to take more responsibility. Israel-Palestine, more support for Israel, or a new approach? Trump has always been unapologetically pro-Israel, and that won't change. But will he try again to broker a Palestinian peace deal, or will he focus entirely on strengthening Israel's position? Some believe he could push for tougher action against Hamas or support Israeli military operations if conflicts escalate. Others think he may ignore Palestine altogether and focus on the larger picture, containing Iran and expanding Israel's influence. What's next? A more aggressive or more strategic Trump? Will Trump take take a tougher military approach in the Middle East, or will he focus on diplomacy? Will he expand the Abraham Accords, creating a new regional alliance against Iran? Or will his America First policy mean less U.S. involvement, leaving Middle Eastern countries to fight their own battles? One thing is certain: Trump's return will shake up the Middle East like never before. For decades, the U.S. dollar has been the backbone of global trade, giving America unmatched economic power. But now, a growing alliance, BRICS, is actively working to challenge the dollar's dominance. Led by China and Russia, this group is pushing for a new global financial system, one that doesn't depend on the U.S. But with Trump's return, will these efforts accelerate, or will he put a stop to them? Will BRICS finally succeed in creating a world less dependent on the dollar, or will Trump fight back and reinforce American financial dominance? Let's look at what's coming. BRICS is growing stronger, with Saudi Arabia, Iran, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Argentina joining the alliance. Their goal? To weaken the US dollar and create a new financial system based on alternative currencies. China and Russia are leading the push for a BRICS currency or a gold-backed trade system. More countries are trading in Chinese yuan instead of US dollars, signaling a shift in global financial power. The question is, can Trump stop this, or has the process already gone too far? See to you Trump's stance on BRICS. Will he go after China and Russia's financial influence? During his first term, Trump waged economic war on China through tariffs and trade restrictions. If BRICS continues to push de-dollarization, expect Trump to hit back harder with financial sanctions and economic pressure. He could also pressure U.S. allies like India and Brazil to limit their involvement with BRICS. But here's the risk. What if sanctions push more countries away from the dollar instead of bringing them back? Could Trump's aggressive economic policies accelerate BRICS's rise instead of stopping it? Saudi Arabia and the future of the petrodollar. A make-or-break moment. One of the biggest threats to the US dollar is Saudi Arabia's growing ties with BRICS. For 50 years, the US and Saudi Arabia had a deal. Saudi oil would be sold in dollars in exchange for US military protection. But now, Saudi Arabia is open to accepting Chinese yuan for oil, which could end the dominance of the petrodollar. If Trump returns, he might offer Saudi Arabia new military deals or economic incentives to keep them tied to the U.S. But if he fails, BRICS could gain control over global oil trade, dealing a major blow to the dollar. The role of Russia and China. Can Trump disrupt their plans? Russia, under heavy U.S. sanctions, has fully embraced de-dollarization, and it's urging other countries to do the same. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is spreading its financial influence across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, reducing dependence on the dollar. Trump's return could lead to a major economic confrontation with China, possibly cutting off Chinese banks from the global financial system. He could also expand sanctions on Russia to punish countries that use Russian payment systems instead of the dollar. But will that be enough, or will China and Russia find ways to bypass U.S. financial dominance? Could Trump bring back U.S. financial strength? If Trump wants to fight de-dollarization, he needs to strengthen the U.S. economy and make the dollar more attractive. The big question remains, is it already too late to stop BRICS, or can Trump still turn things around? Will Trump's return be a major blow to BRICS, or will his economic policies push more countries toward de-dollarization? Can he convince Saudi Arabia to stay loyal to the petrodollar, or will they side with China? Is the world ready to ditch the U.S. dollar, or does America still hold the financial upper hand? One thing is certain: Trump's return will either save the dollar or accelerate the biggest financial shift in modern history. The rise of artificial intelligence and the control of free speech have become two of the biggest battlegrounds in modern politics. For years, Trump has fought against big tech censorship, calling out companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter for silencing conservative voices. At the same time, AI is evolving rapidly, with governments and corporations seeking more control over information. With Trump's return, will he finally break up big tech's power? Will AI be weaponized against free speech? Or will he push for a more open and fair fair internet. The next few years could decide the future of digital freedom. Trump versus big tech, the fight that started it all. In his first term, Trump accused social media giants of censoring conservative voices. Twitter and Facebook repeatedly fact-checked and suppressed his posts, especially during the 2020 election. After the January 6th Capitol riot, he was banned from all major platforms, a move many saw as proof of big tech's unchecked power. In response, Trump launched Truth Social, but can it ever compete with Silicon Valley giants? If he returns, will he force social media platforms to restore free speech? Or is the system too far gone? AI and censorship, the new weapon against free speech? With the rise of AI-powered moderation, social media companies can now suppress content faster than ever. Algorithms are designed to prioritize mainstream narratives while downranking or banning dissenting voices. AI-driven fact-checking is often biased, targeting anti-establishment views while protecting elite narratives. Deepfake technology and AI-generated propaganda are being used to manipulate public perception. Who decides what's real? Trump could push for new regulations on AI and social media, ensuring that it doesn't become a tool for digital authoritarianism. Can Trump break up big tech? His plans for 2025. In his first term, Trump threatened to repeal Section 230, the law that protects tech companies from liability for content on their platforms. But can he actually succeed, or will Silicon Valley fight back harder than ever? AI and government control, the real threat? While AI is being used for censorship, governments are also using it for mass surveillance and social control. China's social credit system already punishes citizens for speaking out. Could a similar AI-driven system come to the U.S.? Biden has supported AI regulations that increase government oversight. Will Trump reverse this? If Trump wins, will he use AI to expand personal freedoms, or will AI become a battlefield between global powers? The future of free speech and AI under Trump. If Trump wins, big tech could face its biggest challenge yet. Will he shut down AI-driven censorship or fail to take on Silicon Valley's deep-rooted power? Can he stop AI from being weaponized against political dissidents? Or will governments continue their push for control? One thing is certain: Trump's war against big tech isn't over, and his return could redefine the internet as we know it. Donald Trump's return to power isn't just about the United States, it's about the future of the entire world. His presidency will shape global conflicts, financial power, free speech, and the battle between nationalism and globalism. But the real question is, will he restore American dominance, or will his enemies fight back harder than ever? The battle for power. Trump is a direct threat to global elites, the UN, the WEF, and Silicon Valley. His return could mean the collapse of globalist institutions and a shift toward independent nations. But if he fails, the push for global governance and centralized control will accelerate. The economic and geopolitical war, BRICS and de-dollarization threaten U.S. financial dominance. Trump could use sanctions, trade wars, and new alliances to fight back. But is it too late? Meanwhile, global conflicts in Ukraine, the Middle East, and Taiwan could define his foreign policy. Will he prevent World War III or get caught in new conflicts? Free speech and AI, the digital battleground. AI-driven censorship and big tech monopolies control the flow of information. Trump's fight against Silicon Valley could restore free speech or expose how deep the system really is. Final question: can Trump stop the New World Order? Trump's presidency could be the last stand against globalism or the final push toward a centralized world government. Will he reshape history, or will this be the moment the world order permanently shifts? The next 4 years will decide everything.